Hi, it's Dr. Parikh. At this point, you've read your 3 articles, you've taken notes, and now it's time to find a 4th article. The reason that I have you wait this long to find article number 4 instead of just finding them all at once is that I want article 4 to be something that really ties everything together. Now, normally when you write these papers, you're going to be using 8 to 10 sources. And so there's a lot more going on there. But you need more skill to read those sources. You're not there yet. I didn't want to dump that on you in this class. And so instead, this class focuses on reading a few sources really carefully. But what I've been finding is that when there's only 3 sources, it's almost impossible to get the kind of integration I'm looking for. Because you're starting out, you're just picking sources that seem interesting, that might go somewhere, and then you look and see what you have, and it may not be as cohesive as you thought it would. So this video is about creating cohesion, but it's also about how to search for that 4th article. I keep saying article, it's scholarly source. That means no websites. Even websites that I would accept as a scholarly source in terms of it's allowed to be used in your paper, like a .gov website for a statistic, that's not what I'm looking for here. I'm looking for a body of work, like a journal article. It could be a chapter in an edited book. So sometimes books have editors, but each chapter is written by a different person or group of people. And often they're on very specific topics. Or it could be a book. It might not mean that you read the whole book cover to cover, but that you read a couple chapters and kind of skim through the rest well enough to get the main point of what the book is saying. Most of you are still going to be using an article for this. It's also not a textbook. Textbooks are considered secondary sources because it's somebody summarizing what a bunch of other primary sources say. I want you to use a primary source, so something that's written by the author, not specifically for students, but for the general population. Or not general population, but for general professionals, for the use of professionals in your field. So here we're back in Psych Info. I'm not going to drag you through the steps of how to get here. Now the first time, so let's say I still want to do tattoos, if I can spell it right. And Psych Info has a lot of different suggestions for me. Let's say that several of my articles focus on college students. That may have been an intentional choice by them. It may have been a convenience sample, but either way, I've got pretty much all college students in my articles. So sure, I'll search tattoos in college students. Now let's look down here. There's there's some ways you can choose to be more broad in your search. I'm still going to choose linked full text right now because I'm burning daylight. I want to move forward with my article. Publication year, let's say since 2000. So we'll be a little more open-minded here, let's say. Peer-reviewed. You don't necessarily have to have a peer-reviewed scholarly source. So peer-reviewed generally means a journal. So an edited book or a book is not peer-reviewed. Peer-reviewed means that a group of reviewers look at the article, give feedback on it about whether or not it should be published. Usually either the article gets rejected or it gets accepted pending revisions. Or revise and resubmit is probably the most common, where it says, if you make these changes, then we'll consider it again, but it's not quite ready for prime time yet. So there's this whole process involved. Publishing a book, you work with editors and publishers. It's a little different, not to say it's, all academic books are just like self-publishing on Amazon, but it's a different type of process. So as we go through here, in the past, we may have chosen something like peer-reviewed journal. I don't think I've typically done that, but you could. But here, I'm not going to necessarily do that. Now, if you have linked full text, you're probably going to be limiting yourself to mostly journals. The library does have ebook collections, but if you're interested in books, you may want to try that unchecked. As we go down, blah, blah, blah. You don't need to worry. Exclude dissertations. That could be a good one to check. Although you could include it. Again, it doesn't have to be peer-reviewed because dissertations are not peer-reviewed. Dissertations are usually fairly long. They're usually between 150 and 250 pages double-spaced in a Word document. They're a pain in the butt to print. I would recommend not printing them if you can avoid it. And they're much longer, but you could find a dissertation that's a nice way to tie things together. So let's just do a search. So when we're looking for this fourth resource, our search is much more broad. So here we're finding some of the same articles we've found before. Now some of these are really interesting, like honor students and tattoos. So yeah, it's just interesting. I think partly this is probably kicking up different things because I took their suggestion for a search term. But when you are choosing an article, think about whether it fits with all three of your articles. Ideally, that's what you would have, something that touches on all three. You also may want something that gives a little more broad information. So rather than empirical, you may actually want something. So where did I choose empirical? No, I'm not sure where to find it. Goodness. But you may actually look for things that don't do direct research, that are summarizing other research. Now, in a younger field, like I would guess tattoos is, especially if you're looking at tattoos in college students, it's a little too narrow. It's probably mostly going to be articles. But you can still find something that kind of ties a few different things together, potentially. Remember, the guidelines for the paper, you need two main themes. Those are your headings. Each theme needs to have at least 3 citations, meaning citations from different sources. So 3 sources, and each paragraph within that theme needs to have at least 2 sources. So I'm trying to give you, what's the bare minimum for acceptable levels of integration? And ideally, by the time you're ready to graduate, your writing will be more and more integrated. It'll get closer and closer to the kind of writing you read in the introduction sections of your journal articles. When you do a note, so you're still going to do an article note for Article 4, and when you look at the templates, I have the templates folder pulled up, you'll see 1A, B, and C are all article notes. I've just made them different ones so that if you copy all the files over, you have them there, but they're all the same. It's the same template over and over. Article Notes 4 is different. It's a little shorter. Oh, this is a good reminder. If you have what looks to be a journal article and it's a page or 2 long and it talks about a book, that's probably a book review, which is not acceptable. Now, it may be a great cue to, hey, here's a book that I should get my hands on, either from the library or through interlibrary loan, maybe requesting just a chapter or 2. And it can be a summary that helps you, but I still, you ethically need to actually look at the book for yourself because you may misunderstand based on that summary, or there may be important points that you're missing. Or you may find that the author of that book review actually missed some main points or misunderstood something. So book reviews are great for finding sources, but they cannot be used as a source. Magazine articles, also still not okay. So magazine articles, textbooks, book reviews, websites, these are not acceptable for your fourth source. So here, same thing, you'll do the reference, the keywords, and I still want to see at least 4 paraphrase main ideas that you think you might be able to, things that you might be able to use in your final paper. And at this point, you've read all 3 of your other articles. You should have some good ideas of the kinds of things you want to pull out and talk about from those articles. And then how this article fits with the other articles, really just, a sentence or 2 or a couple bullet points that I just want to see your thought process. I want to give you space to think very solidly, very concretely about how this article is going to help bring your paper together. And then, as usual, copy the abstract. If you're using a book and there is no abstract, see if you can find a similar 1 paragraph, maybe something that the publisher wrote to promote it. with something that captures the main idea. If you can't find that, just write, "This is a book." There is no abstract. So the fourth article, it's it's a much more broad, or fourth source is a much more broad invitation to find something that pulls your paper together. It doesn't need to be an empirical, peer-reviewed journal article like the others. And I hope it helps make your paper stronger and more interesting. I hope it's something you can use as a background source. So to give you some basic information about the topic that maybe you may even know already. You may know because it's something you're interested in or something that's affected you or someone you care about, but you need to have a way to cite that. So hopefully it gives you nice citations for some of the basic information. And I hope it just makes your paper stronger and helps you be able to say what you're interested in saying about the source. And I hope it also demonstrates for you a little bit of how the research process twists and turns. It's not you find all your articles and you go forward. It's not always like that. You often dig a little deeper into something. Final reminder, citations and references in your 3 existing articles are a great way. You don't have to necessarily do a search for an article. You might take a source especially if you see the same source or the same author pop up a few times, you might look specifically for that person's work. So good luck finding your 4th article. Hopefully by now the article notes format is pretty familiar and you can just kind of tap it out, and it's really more about figuring out what things are meaningful rather than figuring out the format of the notes. Thanks. Bye.